Herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Folge von TV-Helden, der Branchenpodcast für alle, die sich professionell mit Fernsehen beschäftigen. Mein Name ist Christian Heinkele. Before we dive in, I'd like to give a big thank you to Agile Content for sponsoring this episode. Agile Content is one of the world's leading white label platform, available in LATAM, the US, Europe, and now also in Germany, Switzerland, Austria. You can learn more about Agile Content in TV-Helden episode 62. If you like more information, check out their website agilecontent.com. Welcome to another episode of the TV-Helden podcast. This time live from the podcast studio here at Medientage München. A huge thank you to the Medientage München team for making this possible. Today I'm joined once again by the brilliant Evan Shapiro, who many of you will remember from his insightful appearance in TV-Helden episode 43 back in August 23. Evan is one of the sharpest minds in the media industry and a visionary when it comes to the future of television and streaming. But he's also a true role model when it comes to recognizing transformation, embracing it, and reinventing himself to succeed the apocalypse of change. Welcome, Evan.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to have you here. So, how is Medientage München? How do you feel about the city and the event?
City is amazing. This neighborhood, this area is really wonderful, and I think reflective of transformation itself.
Yeah.
This used to be all factories, and then it was nightclubs, and now it's this really cool campus for, frankly, media and innovation and progressive, artistic thinking. So that has been really fun. And then what I find, Medientage, really is just getting really rolling here. But what I loved and that I find different about this conference than other conferences that I've been at is there's a ton of students walking around, high school students, younger students and college students. And it seems like the conference partners with the local education organizations to bring these students in and make it free for them.
Yeah.
And, that's, I have loved all the other conferences that I've gone to, but I was just at MIPCOM in Cannes, and I can't say I saw a lot of high school students walking around the Croisette. But, I would argue that at most of these conferences I go to, you don't see a ton of college students and especially high school students learning about the industry. But more importantly, I think, at this moment in time in particular, and I talk about this a lot, and I know we'll talk about this in a couple minutes, the reverse mentoring that we need as an industry, the influx of opinion and insight and feedback from people under the age of 35, under the age of 25, under the age of 18 about how they see the media universe is really important. And you don't really see it that often, but here it feels like a real collision of generations, not just a collision of professionals in different disciplines, but a collision of different demographic perspectives. And that feels very fresh to me.
Okay, that's good feedback. Thank you very much for this. It's nice that this is kind of unique for this event. So let's directly go into your about the youth. Yeah, one of your statements is always we have to listen more to the younger generation, to those under 35. Now, in fact, 50% of the German population is over 50 years old.
More than that, actually. It's actually it's a very old country. Europe, in particular, is extremely old. Yeah.
And so, two questions. Why have we to listen to those under 35? Why is that? And how does the video consumption of the younger generation influence or trigger the viewing habits of the audience?
Yeah, this is a particularly interesting question. I just dropped a report with Barb, which is the video measurement organization in the UK, about video consumption in England and Britain. And this is just as equally important here. Yes, the majority of the country here in Germany, the majority of Europe is over the age of 40, over the age of 50. But this is something I have to, I think, tell people for the first time very often. Generations age.
Yeah.
Every year, millennials turn 35, more and more of them. In fact, the oldest millennials are 43. They're not kids, they have kids. The oldest Gen Z, as you might say, is 27. And so while the millennials and Gen Z are now in the minority, their viewing habits are drastically different than those over 35, those over 50. And every year, more and more of millennials and Gen Z will take important and dominant positions in the ecosystem. So today their viewership is in the minority, but very soon it won't be. And unless you're prepared for what's coming 5 and 10 years down the road, when millennials are 53 and Gen Z are 37 and are not watching broadcast television and are not paying for pay TV. You know, here in this country, ZDF and ARD depend on public funding. They cannot survive without it. And by the way, public service media is so vital to the health of a culture. There are studies that show there's a direct correlation between the health of a democracy and the health of its public service media. And if ZDF and ARD do not cater their services, particularly their news services, to the younger demographics, they will lose them. And what will become dominant are social media for news and information. Trust in our media, trust in our public institutions has dropped dramatically over the last decade. And when you look at recent elections here in Germany, that may be troubling to some people.
Absolutely.
There's a good reason for that. And in America, if you want a good example, look at America. We don't have a public service media. No. So you have to pay attention to younger demographics, because they will be older demographics. They will be the homeowners. They are the homeowners. They are the heads of households, but they will become increasingly the dominant heads of households, the dominant taxpayers, the dominant members of parliament. They will be making decisions on public funding of public media. So you either want to have them on your side by serving them and being relevant to them, or you're fucked. I mean, I don't know what other way to say it. The only, specifically for pay TV, it's an economic question, but for public media, it's a relevancy and a currency question. And if you ignore these generations, they will ignore you, and that will be bad for the ecosystem.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. And interesting that, you fear that they will lose these generations.
They are losing them. They are losing them. If you look at the viewership of younger members of the European Union and Germany in particular, they're not watching broadcast television. They're not, I mean, they will here and there, but as a percentage of their overall diet, they watch substantially more YouTube and substantially more TikTok than they do broadcast or pay TV.
And do you think they will trigger with their behavior or change how older people will watch in future? Because I had an experience last week where I visited my parents. I went to them after bringing my kids to bed. I went to the living room and I saw them watching Yellowstone. I was really surprised. Yellowstone? Yeah, we found it in Magenta TV Plus. And we watched it and we liked it. And my father's 84. So
I mean, that's an older person's show anyway, but actually it's a multi-generation show, I should be fair. But the fact that they found it on a streaming service and not on a pay TV or a broadcast service, that's exactly right. In the UK, where I have much more visibility into the data, the equal social video and streaming now take up an equal amount of television or video viewing as does broadcast. Yeah. Now think about that. That's the BBC. Here, on streaming TV, ZDF and ARD combined equal the audience of YouTube.
Yeah.
And Amazon Prime is very big here, and then you have all the other local streaming services as well. And so I think it's crucial, and especially if you look at the issues, the problems that the pay TV providers here have had. I mean, they're really struggling.
Absolutely.
And that's entirely a generational thing.
Yeah.
It's not that, and I think there's this misperception that it's a cord cutting problem. It's not a cord cutting problem. It's a cord never problem.
Yeah.
These are people who lived in their parents' home, left home, and never signed up for pay TV. Yeah. They'll sign up for broadband, but they'll never sign up for pay TV. Yeah. It's never going to happen. And if they do, by the way, they'll get it from like YouTube. Yeah. I don't think YouTube TV is here yet, but in the United States, it's incredibly popular. It's the 4th largest pay TV provider in the US, YouTube TV.
Yeah. Maybe the TV of tomorrow is still today. So let's take the perspective of a cable operator in Germany. They has been undergoing significant changes this year, particularly in the cable segment. They're getting forced to really understand their customers. Why is it for TV customers so critical to keep the consumers in the center? You already explained. But how should you act as an operator, balancing focused on the different customer segments? Because on the one hand, you still have the older generations, and now you have the new ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is this misperception that young people don't want to pay for content. Young people actually do prefer to pay to skip ads. The younger a consumer is, the more likely they are to pay for content. Not that they don't watch free content. YouTube and TikTok are both free and very, very popular. But they understand Spotify and Roblox and Fortnite. They understand that they have to pay. Netflix is their, probably their favorite television service other than YouTube. And so, one, I think there has been an ignorance and ignoring of the data. And I think that's particularly the case among, the pay TV providers. They have just really not watched the shift in generational dynamics underneath their feet. The last era of media, the top-down, gatekeeper-led era of media, was defined by his master's voice, which was the slogan of RCA, who invented TV. This era, the user-centric era, will be defined by the audience's voice. And the audience's voice is the data. They are screaming at us, this is what we want. They're realizing, these pay TV operators, that older millennials who are now heads of household and have kids are not paying for pay TV. They're getting Netflix, they're using YouTube, and they're using other services to provide their kids the programming that they need. And then they go to things like FAST, which is growing pretty quickly here in Germany. And news is a huge use case for FAST. So they're going to these streaming services for the entertainment and information that they need. What's fascinating, though, is I believe that there is an absolute way for pay TV to survive and thrive in this new era if they figure out how to reclaim that bundling crown that they've been known for. The power of the pay TV ecosystem has been economies of scale, bundling services, usually programming, but very often things like broadband. Yes. And now mobile. And I will talk about this later today, but there's great evidence. Look at Amazon Prime. Most people that we know have Amazon Prime memberships. And it's not for the video service. No. That's an added bonus. It's for the free shipping and all the other perceived services that Amazon Prime provides. That's the new bundle. So if you're going to be an aggregator, which I think is a real important part of the ecosystem, you have to understand what being an aggregator really means. It doesn't mean putting a lot of video services together. That's not what people are looking for. What it means is putting together a few utilities like video, broadband, mobile. I would argue that many pay TV providers should be looking into providing audio And security, I mean, you look at, the successful parts of the Comcast business right now in the US and the Charter business right now aren't people who get video and broadband alone. It's video, broadband, mobile, home security, other elements, utilities, things that make them uncancelable. And that's really the crucial part of the new super app bundling mentality.
Yeah, I recently did an interview with a platform in several different countries, and they told me that in Italy, their TV customer bundles services with insurance. In Brazil, with pet services, which is very, very successful. So
yeah, the average consumer now has 100 individual logins in their life. 100. That's crazy. What the consumer wants is fewer. Yeah. They want fewer bills. They want fewer logins. They want fewer relationships with service providers. So someone who can bundle well, by the way, you have to bundle well. Bundling poorly, meaning creating friction between the services, so you can bundle video and insurance, but if it's hard for the consumer to use that bundle, well, then it defeats the purpose. But if there are perceived, it doesn't, to a certain extent, economies of scale, meaning like I'm saving money. That's definitely important, especially as economic times get hard. But the convenience, that is something that more and more consumers are striving for. We've created this massive paradox of choice amongst apps in the world. There are too many apps, and the consumer wants someone to make their life easier. And if you as an aggregator can do that, you're going to win.
Okay. So bundling it right, it should be convenient for the customer. So talking about this super aggregation of content, I saw all your charts about the churn numbers of the SWAT services. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's getting higher every year too.
It shows me the consumer wants to have flexibility and he wants to jump from one service to the other. So if someone like Telecom makes a super bundle with Netflix, RTL Plus, Disney in one bundle for at least 24 months contract period, is this not then the wrong way?
I don't think you need to. I mean, I think the 24, look, if you create a 24-month contract, you're going to lower churn dramatically and improve your lifetime value. That's no question. But I think there are a lot of consumers, especially younger consumers, who are like 24 months. I can't think that far in advance, right? But I don't think it necessarily. I don't think the length of the contract is the answer. I think the bundling for efficiency and convenience is the actual solution. So yes, I think if you can bundle, if you could give the consumer a free phone, mobile service, video service, broadband, and audio in one bundle, I don't think those consumers would ever cancel. Spotify has the lowest churn in all of entertainment. Why? Because I use it every day. Every day. And very often I'm subscribed with 2 or 3 friends on top of it. And it's tied into my social media. It's part of my personality at this point.
Okay.
I mean, Trump played his own Spotify playlist on stage for 40 minutes and danced the other day. So we all have a Spotify relationship, and it's very hard to break. So if you add these daily touchstones, these daily utilities to a bundle, I think it's impossible to break up. So yes, I think that is, the super app is definitely going to be a part of the media foundation, I think, for the next decade. Amazon is the great example of that. But I think YouTube is the great example of that too. You look at it, YouTube Premium, YouTube Kids, YouTube Music, YouTube Gaming. It's not bundled per se, but it is bundled inside the profile of the users.
Exactly.
It goes with me everywhere I go. It also, affects my search when I go on Google.
Exactly.
So it is so ingrained, and this is why they face regulatory pressures to break them up. But as a consumer, I love it. Right? Absolutely. It knows me everywhere I go. And I have 3 different profiles, and it automatically tells me when I need to switch profiles from one to the next in order to access slides or access documents. To go back to the churn thing for a second. So right now, most of the Western, let's call it middle class and up, video consumer has two services that they won't break up with. Netflix, actually three. Netflix, Amazon, YouTube. Let's put YouTube aside for a second. Netflix and Amazon are the two premium streaming services that everybody has. The third slot is a revolving door of services based on what's on that service that month. So yes, I'll sign up for Max. I'll watch Hacks, and then I'll cancel after I binge it. Yes, I'll sign up for Apple TV Plus to watch Bad Monkey or Slow Horses or Ted Lasso. But then after I'm done binging it, I will cancel it. They actually have the highest churn in all of video. When you look at Apple One's churn for Apple TV Plus's churn for video, it's almost 9%. 9% per month. That means in 10 months, they recycle through their entire user base, right? Yeah. When you look at their churn rate for Apple One, which is a combination of Apple TV Plus, Apple News, Apple Arcade, Apple Fitness, iCloud, it's under 3%.
Okay. Because it's so
utility. It's utility. I touch it every day.
Why is Netflix so successful? So I was really surprised by the different numbers and
for churn.
Sorry,
they have the lowest churn.
I think it was 3%
or closer to 2%. Yeah.
Yes, and the others were 9 or 8 or 7%.
Well, the average is close to 6%, and Netflix's is close to 2%. So it's 1/3 the churn of everybody else.
One of my thesis was that they are very successful with partnering with the cable operators and IPTV providers, and that's why they are, in all these bundles. Is this one theory, or why do you think Netflix
I think that's,
is successful?
I don't know that that's the highest use case. Yeah. They have been very good at that, and that's been a big part of their plan over the last years. But I mean, I think the biggest reason why Netflix has been so successful at keeping churn low is they have a lot of content. Yes. They have a ton of content. Look at the big use case last year for them. Yes, their original content does very well for them. So Bridgerton was streamed, I think it was the most streamed thing in the world last year was Bridgerton. Baby Reindeer was a huge hit for them. Squid Games and Stranger Things, and we can go down the list. I mean, it's Love Island. Like, there's a ton of really, really, really popular stuff on their service. But Suits became this phenomenon last year. Suits.
Yes.
Suits.
I watched it, I don't know, 6 years ago or 7.
Young Sheldon is crushing it for them. So stuff that, Schitt's Creek became a phenomenon a couple years ago, but it wasn't because of its airing on its original network. It was because of Netflix. So, Netflix has this perception of having everything. Right? But they are there are two major headwinds that they're facing. They are increasingly do not have everything because their competitors are taking back their own content on Disney and Hulu and other places. Secondarily, this password sharing crackdown that they did this year, which was really the driver of their success this year. So they were converting passive subscribers who shared a logon amongst 5 or 6 people, and they created 5 or 6 new accounts or 4 or 5 new accounts this year. So their profits and their churn and all of that was so strong this year because they rolled that crackdown out all year. They didn't do it all at once. They rolled it out all year long. That is coming to an end. They are out of people to convert. This quarter, this is the quarter it ends. They're done. So they will have converted or lost 100% of the password sharers by the end of this year. That's why they're stopping reporting their subscriber numbers. You note that, right? In January, they will never report their subscriber numbers again.
Okay.
And this is why.
Because
that time is over. Their addition of new subscribers is going to slow dramatically. And then suddenly, the churn's going to start to creep up because all of these people that they converted this year are going to go, they're going to log on and tell me if this is a use case for you. You log on to Netflix, you can't find something you want to watch. You log on to a different service, you can't find something you want to watch. You log on to a third service, you can't find something you want to watch. So you give up, you have a beer, and you just watch Suits or Friends.
Yeah.
Now that everybody who used to get Netflix for free on their parents' password has to pay for it themselves, that shit's not going to fly anymore. I log on and I can't find something to watch. No. That's not going to work. So next year, they know this. This is why they're not reporting sub numbers next year, starting next year. Their new user growth is going to slow and their churn is going to creep up. I don't think it's going to skyrocket, but it's going to get much more normal than it has been, which is why they're buying WWE wrestling. To find a new user base and have a live show that's utility. This is why they paid a fortune for 2 football games on Christmas Day. This is why they just hired John Mulaney to do a live talk show. They know this problem is coming. They're very smart. They're also incredibly untransparent. And so, they will shift their business model. They are very good at that. But Netflix has gone from being the best app in entertainment on the planet Earth to being just a TV channel. They are now just a TV channel. And that's a much more difficult business than what they've been in up until this point.
So, given the rapid technology changes and the shifting customer habits we already discussed, how should media companies in Germany and across Europe stay competitive in the next few years?
I think if you look at ZDF, they've been very progressive in their use of YouTube, in their use of FAST. Now, I think part of that is driven by the fact that they have a commercial arm that has to be profitable. ZDF Studios is a for-profit entity, right? So I think, and by the way, same thing with BBC. So, if you look at BBC, if they didn't have BBC Studios and the $2 billion in revenue that arm of their organization brings in every year, it'd be a very difficult operation to run. I think ZDF is setting a good example in their use of new technology and new platforms. They see FAST and YouTube as a potential broadcast partner. I think you need to lean into that much more heavily. Because ZDF can't sell as much advertising as their commercial counterparts, and same with ARD, they really do need to branch out and embrace YouTube as another broadcast partner where they will lose consumers under 35. There is no question about that. YouTube is actually, it's the second most used app on connected televisions. The first is Amazon in this market. And but that's Amazon and that's Google. How do you compete with 2 of the largest companies in history? Not just 2 of the largest companies right now, but 2 of the largest companies in the history of humans. The only way you can do that is to kind of lean into it. You can use Google to compete with Google. You can use YouTube to compete with YouTube. In fact, YouTube would love you too, because they're not making content. Same with Amazon, who is the #1 provider of connected televisions in this market now, of new connected televisions. They are the biggest seller of new connected televisions in this market. And so if you embrace them as a distribution partner with apps and things like that, then you can really compete against them at the same time. I call them collaborators. So that's thing #1, is to go where the audiences are going. Thing #2 is collaborate. If ZDF and ARD and ProSieben and RTL collaborate, even though they're competitors, the main competition isn't each other, it's YouTube, it's Amazon. And Netflix. And if they collaborate and I mean, not necessarily share programming, but share data, a number of things will happen. First and foremost, we can create a more personalized interface for the consumer. So in a privacy protected way, if they all share data, then the user can log on to a service and immediately it knows that consumer and can provide them personalization that is not there today. It's very frustrating. Discovery is very frustrating. Secondarily, for the advertiser, that shared data creates a much better ecosystem of targeting and tracking of advertising that they're buying.
Yes.
The reason why 60% of the world's advertising, not 60% of the world's digital advertising, but 60% of the world's advertising goes to 3 companies, Meta, Google, and Amazon. Why? Because their tracking of the effectiveness of the advertising, the targeting on the front end. Yeah. These are not just demographics we're targeting. We're targeting your most likely buyer based on our data connecting with your data. And then we track your ads to see whether or not the consumers you're reaching bought your product. Television can't do that today. It doesn't do any of that. It sells demographics, which is adorably anachronistic. So television needs to target consumers based on their buying behaviors, track the advertising through the impression and through the transaction. That's what television needs to do. It can't, because instead of sharing data and competing with the data stack of Google, Meta, and Amazon, they each treat their data as this walled garden of precious gems. It's not. It's too small to compete with them. But if you combine your data into a privacy-protected data stack, a clean room that can commingle with the agencies and the brand's first-party data to target the most likely buyer and then track the advertising through completion of transaction or non-transaction, you will be able to compete with the big tech companies because your environment is more premium. You're a better content-safe environment. People don't want to buy as much Google and Meta as they're buying. There's 2 different reasons for that. 1, content safety. And 2, they know at least half of what they're buying is fraud. They know that. They know it. But because they can track the efficacy of it, and because it is still so effective, despite the fact that half of it is fraud, no one gets fired for buying more Google. No one gets fired for buying more Meta. The other component to this is most people who buy video advertising only buy YouTube and Meta, because they're small mom and pop laundromats and attorneys and car dealerships. They're only spending $4,000 or $5,000 on an ad campaign. They can log on to the back end of Google and Meta, pick the most likely buyers in their region, and then track the effectiveness of their campaign. Can ZDF do that? Can ARD, can ProSieben do that? Probably not.
No.
And so that's
still
what you're
broadcast. You have to believe it.
Well, and they're not catering to the small, mid-sized, and teeny tiny clients. That's actually a huge part of the future of television advertising. Retail media for a grocery store and for a lawyer and for an insurance agency, where I'm 1 click away from purchasing. That's the future of television advertising. And right now, especially in Europe, we're just not close to that at all.
Yeah, especially the big industries, the traditional industry like the automobile car industry will go down in the next years. So the big spenders of advertising probably are not on the list anymore in future.
Well, let's put it this way: the big automakers still need to sell cars. Right. So they're going to take advertising. And they would prefer to take television advertising. There's a ton of science around the importance of branding, the importance of reach, the importance of frequency in TV. But because they can't prove that it's working, they're going to move money out of TV and towards Google and Meta and Amazon, where they know it's working. And that's going to be that's the competition at this point.
Cool. I could do that for hours, but unfortunately you have to take the stage here at Medientage München. Evan, it was so wonderful. Thank you very much. I wish you a great time in Munich.
Thank you so much.
And that wraps up another exciting episode of the TV-Helden podcast with Evan Shapiro, recorded at the Medientage München. A huge thank you to Evan Shapiro for joining us again and sharing his expert insights on the global and German media markets. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to also check out Evan's previous appearance in episode 43. Also, if you are interested in staying up to date on the latest media trends and insights, I highly recommend subscribing to Evan's newsletter, which is full of valuable perspective in industry analysis. Don't forget to subscribe also to the TV-Helden podcast. Leave us a review and stay tuned for more great conversations. Looking forward to meeting you at the next events, such as the TV Congress Media Hall. Media Hall is my TV Congress. Media Hall will take place from April 2nd to April 3rd in Frankfurt during Fiber Days. It's a real TV event. Until then, keep watching, keep learning, and stay ahead in this ever-evolving media landscape. Yours, Christian.